We are recording so we can share this one out. Well, I'll go ahead and get started with some of our general housekeeping as we continue to watch folks join us. First and foremost, welcome to the February Coffee and Conversation. We did not have one in January as we were celebrating our annual celebration. And so this is the first time we've gathered and hopefully not going to be the norm for this year. We can't wait to get back in person next month. But first and foremost, we want to thank our sponsor, Cone Health. Cone Health sponsors Coffee and Conversation each year to allow us to bring this programming. They are our sponsor and typically our host. So we miss you guys this morning, but we are so glad that we're here. We also want to thank our Circle of Champions who support our work throughout the year. Our circle includes a Legacy Federal Credit Union, Cone Health, Lincoln Financial Group, Truist, Treliant Federal Credit Union, Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist, Duke Energy, Martinsville Speedway, and VF Corporation at the platinum level. At the gold level, we have Kelly Office Solutions, Myrick Construction, Novant Health, and Procter & Gamble. And at the silver level, we have Forvis, Mazars, and Carolina Core FC. And at this point, we're going to acknowledge our new members from December and January. So I will introduce Katrina Ross, our membership manager, to walk you through that slide.
Good morning, everybody. We're so excited to have some of our new members here with us today. Usually we love to have you all raise your hands in the crowd and let everyone know who you are. So if you are a new member, do you want to just go ahead and say you're new here in the chat so everyone knows who they want to reach out to after this call? But again, thank you all so much for being here. And then really quickly, I just want to remind you all about our referral campaign. You all support the work that we do every day for the chamber, and we couldn't do what we do without your referrals in the community. So remember, keep referring businesses to us. We're going to keep giving away really cool swag every month to recognize you all for the support you give us.
Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. And at this point, we're going to hear from Ryan Blackledge. Ryan is the Vice President of Government and External Affairs for Cone Health. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning. So before I get into the main thing I want to talk about, public service announcement that we were talking before everyone got on. It's cold outside. There might be ice. Please encourage people not to run on snow and ice because they will slip and fall, and that's no good. I know we don't get snow that regularly here in Greensboro, but it can still injure you. Something else that can injure you, how's that for a segue, is bad heart health. February, in case you're not aware, in case you don't have an elementary school children who brings home something related to Valentine's Day almost every day of February, February is Heart Health Awareness Month. Here at Cone Health, we have an amazing nationally recognized heart surgery team who many years ago, 20 years ago, in fact, said, we're tired of cutting people open, cracking them open to get to their hearts to try to repair things. It would make more sense to try to prevent that. So many years ago, they embarked on major efforts to try to keep people from needing their surgical services. To that end, over in the chat, I do want to point out there is a link to learn more about heart health, why it's important. Cone Health, deeply committed to providing highest quality services when you need them, but we hope that we can avoid that. I have shadowed a heart doc. I have seen an open heart surgery standing at someone's head. You don't want that to, you don't want to have that happen to you. So anything we can do as individuals, as a community, to avoid getting to that point, we need to be doing it. So got some tips, some things to be aware of. If you follow that link, I will also point out that Cone Health has invested in a building that we will be opening soon that is going to be focused on prevention. And if you do have heart surgery, it's important to prevent you from needing it again. If you've seen the public artwork on Windover near where Moses Cone Hospital is, that is the parking deck for that new center. But it's going to be a place where folks from all over the community can come in and get that preventative care, learn what they need to do to stay healthy, to hopefully avoid needing our surgical services. But if you do, they're great. With that, thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing y'all in person at some point soon at our Med Center Greensboro up on Battleground right at Drawbridge. But good to be here. Good to see everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. At this point, we have two very special members that we would like to spotlight. Each month, we recognize our member of the month. And as we did not meet in January, we are doing our members of the month for February and our members of the month for March today. And so these are members that we would like to recognize. They also receive a video, so be on the lookout for a promotional video about each of these members. So I have the honor of going first for our member of the month for February. Mr. Kevin Cooper with InfraPros is on the call. I see Kevin. Kevin, can you wave at everybody and say hi?
Hey there,
Hey,
how's
there's
everybody?
there's Kevin. Kevin is an absolute joy to work with. When I tell you that the very first time we met Kevin, we were so excited to meet him and to hear about his passion for the work that he does within the community. InfraPros is a leader in providing professional contracting services for commercial, industrial, and public customers for off-site construction and ongoing operations. They specialize in modular pre-constructed skid components and turnkey solutions for HVAC equipment with a focus on energy efficiency and maximum reliability and optimization. We have been out to InfraPros. They are the top of the line in the work that they do. But what also sets them apart is their focus on minority business enterprise. They are certified by the National Minority Supplier Development Council, which lets them leverage their network to provide superior solutions and promote diversity and inclusion in the industry. And Kevin works with us with our Minority Business Accelerator. And Kevin has also brought multiple businesses to us for us to be able to lock arms with those companies and get the word out about them in the community. So Kevin, congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, what a joy. If you want to say a little bit about what you guys do beyond the description I gave, we'd love to hear it.
Well, in a nutshell, we are an anomaly, so to speak, because we're not a hybrid. We do off-site construction as well as data center operations. But what makes us, sort of smile and gives us joy is the fact that our revenue drives our mission, and our mission is to help underdeveloped, underutilized individuals to get the knowledge and the support they need to be constructive, productive citizens of our community, and that is our passion.
Thank you, Kevin. So we'll get out there and give you your award and take a photo, and we'll get that video out soon. But thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Katrina, you have the member of the month for March.
I am so excited to give our March member of the month away to James Dean with JD Financial Group. James is an amazing financial planner. He travels and he makes sure to remind everybody why Greensboro is a great place to be and why they should either travel here, move here, and be in Greensboro. He is also one of our ambassadors. We are so thankful to have him when he comes out to ribbon cuttings, attends our events, and other ways just to really help the membership get more involved. So I'm so excited to give this month to you, James, and I'd love to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you all. It's definitely an honor to serve the community. I think what sets us apart, we're downtown Greensboro, but what sets us apart is I think it's our advocacy work that we do on a national level. I traveled to Tom Tillis' office tour 2 or 3 times a year, and I fuss at both sides for the small businesses and everybody that's on the call. I think that's what sets us apart. Another thing is I won a national award. It's called the Community Impact Award for the largest trade association that's in our industry, which is FinSECA, and that stands for Financial Security for All. And we do a lot of complementary work within the community. We have a wellness program that's absolutely free for companies where we'll go in and talk to their C-suite and their employees just about a financial wellness program. And whether they do business with us or not, just having that impact and that value, we know we're going to get it in return. And like I said, thank you all for the opportunity to come on today and speak a little bit.
Thank you, James. And make sure to watch for that March Member of the Month video to come out here in the next month.
Awesome. Congratulations, James, and congratulations, Kevin. We're going to move to our main topic today. It is my pleasure to welcome Cecilia Thompson, the Executive Director of Action Greensboro, and Sarah McGuire, the Director of Synergy Young Professionals, to share information on the Community Vitals Report. Welcome.
Thank you, Tracy.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us, and thanks for showing up on a snowy day virtually. As Tracy mentioned, it sort of feels like back in the day when you're worried about your dog might start barking or your internet goes out. And so hopefully those two things won't happen when we present this report today. And so Sarah and I work for Action Greensboro. We're a part of the Greensboro Chamber, and we're a unique organization in that we're a consortium of 9 local foundations that pool their resources together to do economic development collaboratively. Sarah and I and our other team members, we wear many hats. And so over the last couple of months, we've been diligently working on pulling a lot of data together to really share what we're calling the Community Vitals Report. And as Ryan mentioned, I'll sort of make my health reference here. Oftentimes we're really thinking about preventatively, like what can we do to make our bodies better? And this, I think, is a real good toolkit in the sense of thinking about how can we look at our vitals and make our community better. And so this is a snapshot of a point in time in Greensboro that allows you to sort of better understand the behind the curtain look at the numbers. And so sort of like your annual physical. And I also like to say that, sometimes people dread going to get their physical because they don't want to see any bad news. But we know it's healthy and we know it's a good thing. And so there will be some complementary data that we share, and there'll be certainly some data that we share that allows us to think strategically about how we grow the community. So we're going to jump right into the report. I think Sarah is going to share the screen. I'll also mention that we'll put the link into the chat for the full report. There's a full 85-page report that allows you to really go even more deeply into this data. So as I mentioned, this is our 2025 Vitals report. After we collected all of the data and more data that's even included in this report, we synthesized it and really thought about what are the key challenges that we're seeing in our community as we look forward. And the first is civic engagement. And so we really believe that civic engagement is important. You guys are getting a gold star today by showing up to Coffee and Conversation and wanting to learn more. But we also recognize through our data collection that voter participation really has some room for improvement in Guilford County. While Guilford County voters are really kind of at the national level pretty par in terms of federal elections and midterm elections, we are really significantly lower in terms of our municipal election turnout. And so if you look at voter turnout in the last election, in the last 2 municipal elections, which was 2022 and 2017, only 15 to 16% of voters that are registered in Guilford County came out, which means that really very few people are paying attention sort of to the levers that pull policy changes and impacts in our community. And so that is one piece that we really think is important to note in this report. The second is stimulating economic growth that works for everyone. We all know that a lot of economic growth is happening in Guilford County and will be happening in the next several years as new companies build out here and hire new employees in our community. But when we look at wages and per capita income across the community, there are significant disparities between race. And so we'll go into those numbers. But when we think about how do we grow our community, we really need to think about how we grow our community for all of our residents in Guilford County. And then the last is really turning our diversity into our greatest strength. We know that North Carolina A&T is the largest HBCU in the country, that UNCG is the most diverse institution in the UNC system. We have a diverse population. And how do we play on that to make sure that we're attracting new businesses, that we're growing our community for all? And this is a real asset for us. So we're going to go into the next slide, which is covering sort of our general overview of who the population is in Guilford County. So we'll call this our community architecture. So when you look at ethnicity and race in Guilford County and in Greensboro, this is a 10-year trend between 2012 and 2022. In both Greensboro and in Guilford County. And you'll see that there are two of the biggest changes here. The first is the percentage overall of the white population in both Greensboro and Guilford County is declining. And so 7.6% in that 10-year time frame in Greensboro and 9.1% on the Guilford County side. At the same time, the other category, which many of you have probably filled out the U.S. Census, they ask you questions around what race do you identify with, and there are sort of 5 categories around white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, etc. If you click other, in most cases, you are identifying as multiracial, biracial, or more than one race. And so the diversifying of our population in Greensboro is increasing. So over that 10-year time, the total population of other category was 7.8% and then 8.3% for Guilford County. And so this is pretty standard in terms of the diversifying of the nation, but it's certainly something to think about as we think about diversification. It really is a strength of our community. The next slide will look at age changes. We were talking to Guilford County Schools about this yesterday in terms of how many babies are being born in Guilford County. So unlike the nation, Guilford County is aging. And so the largest increase that we're seeing in our population is between 60 and 79. That's just a boomer population that is aging in our community. We also are seeing a decline in the under 10 category. And so what does the birth rate look like in Guilford County? Par with the nation, but certainly something that we need to be thinking strategically about. And then a loss of that 40 to 49 age bracket, 2.4% for Greensboro and 2.6% for Guilford County. And so those are really sort of prime workforce age, and so mid-career professionals. And so certainly something that we need to think about as we look at the workforce pipeline so we can retain talented folks that are living in Greensboro and Guilford County for our workforce. I think in positive news, we also saw an increase in that 10 to 19 category on the Greensboro side. And so we are seeing some younger folks come or either relocate into the community or just looking at the pipeline of population change. So overall population growth in Guilford County, here's some good news. In the last 10 years, between 2013 and 2023, Guilford County gained 40,000 people. And so our community is certainly growing. So we're now sitting around 550,000 population in Guilford County. However, if you look at the growth of our community by percentage, we grew 8.6% in that 10-year time frame, and that is slower than our peer metros. And so many of us like that we're a small town in a big city in a small town, and we sort of have a moderate-sized population. But when we think about the growth of the population in terms of meeting the needs of our tax base and our workforce, we are growing slower than our peer counties. So now we're going to go into the mechanics of the city and county government. And so, as you all know, the city of Greensboro and Guilford County have distinct budget priorities and service areas. And so, make sure that if you're going to your city council or your county commissions, you're not asking the city to improve the schools, or you're not asking the county to improve the roads in Greensboro. So these are sort of the high bucket levels in terms of the functions of the city and the county. So on the left side of this screen, you'll see that the total net budget for the city of Greensboro in this budget year, 24-25, is around $802 million. 52% of that budget is for infrastructure, things like roads and water, and things that make our city function. 25% of that is public safety, our police department. 8% is community services, everything from our library system to our award-winning parks and recreation centers. And then general government and debt service make up a smaller portion of their overall budget. On the right-hand side, you'll see that the total general fund budget for Guilford County is around $833 million. 47% of this budget is for education. And so that includes both funding for Guilford Technical Community College as well as Guilford County schools. Following that, 22% of their budget is for health and human services. So that's HHS, that's social services, that's things like the Family Justice Center that sit in that category. Public safety in the sheriff's office is 20%, followed by general government services at that 6% level. So that gives you sort of an overall look at the functions of both. So in terms of revenue, how do the city and the county make their money to do these services? They're very similar in terms of the percentages of income that are coming into the county and the city. And so the highest number, the 50 to 58% of the city's budget and 64% of the county's budget is through property tax. And we're going to go a little bit more into the property tax base and how those impact the tax rates in our community. But those are the largest budget drivers in terms of income. That's followed by sales tax at 21.2% and 12% on the county side, intergovernmental revenue, and also federal and state funding, things that are coming in from other governmental institutions, are 8% and 11%. And so you'll see that is very much similar in terms of the income that is coming in to both organizations. So now we're going to look at the taxable property in our community. And so the funding, when we talked about the property tax being the largest portion of dollars that are coming into the city and the county, how is that made up? So when you look at the left-hand side, the taxable property per capita is looking at the land in Guilford County, how that land is assessed in terms of its property value, and then what that looks like per capita. And so you'll see that Guilford County's taxable property per capita is about $130,000. Forsyth is lower, but we are lower. Forsyth is lower than us, but we are lower than our peer communities in Durham County, Wake County, and Mecklenburg County. So you'll see the taxable property per capita in MEC is almost $250,000, so significantly higher than where we are. On the right-hand side, you'll look at the total tax collected. So when we pay our property tax bills to the county, that's the total tax collected per capita. In Guilford County, it's 953. In Forsyth County, it's 784, and then so on and so forth. We are lower than our peer counties in Durham, Wake, and Mecklenburg County. So moving forward to tax rates. So in most cases, our tax rates are based on the amount of revenue that are coming in to the county and the city. So how can they do the services that we need and desire, and how do they fund those? And so there are two ways to think about this, and I think you could combine them. In some senses, you could say that Guilford County, our tax rate in 2020 was 1.39. That is higher than our peer communities. You could think of it in two ways. I would maybe think about it in both. Is that one, you could say our community provides a higher level of service, and so we pay more for that. On the other hand, you could say our tax base is not growing at the rate in which others are, and so it requires us to have a higher tax rate to meet the needs of our community. Again, two things can be true at the same time, and they probably are in multiple ways to look at this. So that is where we think about our tax rates. So now we're going to move into jobs and economy, which certainly impacts the revenue that the city and the county receive. So first, we're going to look at job growth. This chart looks at a 10-year trend between 2023 or 2003, I'm sorry, and 2022. And so if you look back, if you think back, if you were in Greensboro about 20 years ago, a lot of our legacy industries in the early 2000s were exiting Greensboro. Things were shifting in our economy. And so industries specifically around textiles were exiting the community. And we were at really a point where we were sort of re-envisioning what our industry sector looked like in Guilford County with those loss of jobs. So we had a higher level that we were sort of digging out of a hole to get there. So if you look at the job growth over the last 20 years, Guilford County has grown 9.4%. And then you can look across 11% for Forsyth County. Durham County has grown 42% in the last 20 years. Mecklenburg has grown 56%. Wake County has grown 66%. So significantly lower than our peer communities. That is because we are coming out of a greater hole in the sense of those job growth. However, as we redefine what our industry looks like, we're really sort of looking at par in terms of 1 year growth. So moving back to the next slide, some good news for you. Many of the jobs that have been announced in the last 2 years have not come to fruition. And so those people are still being hired. Those facilities are being built right now. And so Toyota, Boom, Marshall Aerospace, et cetera, those jobs are not reflected in the report that you just, or the chart that you just reviewed. And so that is good news in the sense that there's a lot of industry that is coming. There was another announcement this week by our economic development team. But one thing to note about this is that when we think about the impact of these jobs and these people moving to our community, we also need to think about where they live. And so, for instance, Toyota sits in Randolph County, and so workers for Toyota may or may not live in Guilford County. And so that may or may not impact our tax base growth. So change in employment over the last 10 years between 2013 and 2024. This chart I think is really interesting. It looks at a 10-year change of jobs by sector in Guilford County, but it is ranked from highest wage to lowest wage. And so the highest wage is in management of companies and enterprises. That average wage is around $114,000. The lowest wages are in arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodations, and food services, sitting around $23,000 of an annual wage. So the jobs that we have gained, for the most part, are on that bottom half. So if you look at construction down, we've gained a fair amount of new jobs in that area. We have lost jobs in finance and insurance and information. And so that is notable that those are on that higher end of wage sector. So it's certainly something that we need to, when your doctor says we need to keep our eyes on this, this is something that we keep our eyes on in terms of making sure that we're attracting and creating the jobs that are paying higher wages for our community. I think we're transitioning. Here we go. So speaking of wages, in 2023, the average wage in Guilford County was $57,599. We are the lowest of our peer counties in terms of wages. And so certainly something to note when we're attracting new businesses, when we're providing incentives for new businesses, that they're meeting the wage requirements that our community needs and desires. Looking at per capita income, our per capita income in 2022 was 36,358. In Guilford County, that 10-year change was 47%, so significant growth in terms of our wages. However, I think the most important thing that you look at on this slide is when we look at 2022 per capita income by race. And so in 2022, a white person was making an average of, or per capita, 46,590. A Black person was making 26,000, and a Hispanic or Latino resident was making a little shy of 20,000. And so when we think about those key recommendations that we were thinking about at the beginning of this presentation, how can we grow our community and our economy so it supports all of our residents? And these disparities are something that we think is one of the top things that we're taking away in terms of these vitals. So poverty rates are interesting in this report. And so a 10-year time frame between 2012 and 2022, in Greensboro, poverty has increased. And so 1.9% increase in that 10-year time, and a 4.1% increase in the 10-year time period in Greensboro. On the right-hand side, you'll see Guilford County. Guilford County has decreased their poverty rates by 0.8%, and then 2.3% for children under the age of 18. And so in the report, which I highly recommend you looking at, we also have hard copies at our office if you want one. There are maps in the report that show a lot of this data in maps and in census tracts. And so a theory that we have on this is that there are high wealth communities that are sitting outside of the Greensboro boundaries that are impacting these poverty numbers. There's just a significant more people living in poverty that are living in Greensboro versus living that kind of outweighs it in terms of the Guilford County population. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to talk about talent and workforce.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to keep chugging along. I'm excited to share with you some highlights from the last 3 chapters of the report. And as Cecilia mentioned, we do have hard copies at our office, and our colleague Candace also dropped the link to the report in the chat today, so you can click there and follow along with us. So I'm going to continue the conversation and talk a little bit about labor force change here in our community. As of 2023, 79% of Guilford County residents participated in our labor force. So that means that we had 79% of residents who were either actively employed or seeking employment. And this is great, and this is in line with national trends. I do want to direct your attention to our change in labor force and our change in employment, which shows a little bit different of a story. So if you look on the left-hand side of the chart here, you'll see that in Guilford County, we had a 2.7% change in labor force over the 10-year span from 2013 to 2023. And if you look at this in comparison to our peer counties and even to the state as a whole, we are lagging behind a bit. Similar numbers are reflected on the other side of the chart for employment change. While we do have positive growth here, we think that this could be attributed to our slower rate of growth as a population in general, which Cecilia mentioned earlier in the presentation. Looking at labor force broken out a bit, first by labor force participation by race, we can see that about 60% of white residents are participating in the labor force, 65.4% Black or African American residents, 70% Asian residents, and 72.8% Hispanic or Latino residents participation in our local labor force in Guilford County. And then when we take a look at labor force participation by gender, we can see that a little over 81% of males participate in our local labor force, regardless of their parental status. When we take a look at females, 81% of females participate in the labor force who have children between the ages of 6 and 17, school age, who are probably getting up and going to school every day. When we look at females who have children who are under the age of 6, that labor force participation rate drops just a bit to 78.8%, indicating that in Guilford County, females are a little bit more likely to stay at home with children while they are under school age. Taking a look at employment and unemployment, we talked a little bit about the employment rate at the top of the screen, so I'll direct your attention to the unemployment rate trends, and we've got good news here. In 2013, we had an 8% unemployment rate, and if you fast forward 10 years to 2023, we're sitting at 3.9. So that's a great decrease of nearly 5%. And there are a lot of things that can be attributed to this, and I would like to discuss one of them, which is very important in our community, education, and specifically thinking about post-secondary attainment. So if you take a look at our chart here with both Greensboro and Guilford County, you can see that we had a 6.9% increase in Greensboro of residents who have an associate's degree or higher. And then in Guilford County, that change is almost 10% over that 10-year span. So we've come a long way in that 10-year period. And with a lot of our great local institutions, we expect this number will continue to rise and that this will be reflected in our labor force participation as we move forward. So switching gears a bit, let's talk about our chapter on housing. Housing is really important when we think about not only the housing stock, but the diversity of housing and how quickly our community is building new housing to meet the needs. With home ownership rates, we can see that Guilford County had a 60.2% home ownership rate, which really shows that housing affordability is a thing here in Greensboro and Guilford County compared to our peer communities. So while we had a 60.2% home ownership rate and Forsyth was just a slightly bit higher than us, we can see that Durham and Mecklenburg both have lower rates of home ownership. We also want to talk a little bit about folks in our community who are renters. And so to really get a picture of how renting has an impact on people, we decided to take a look at median gross rent on a monthly basis and compare that to monthly household income. So if you look at Guilford County, in 2022, the median gross rent was just shy of $1,100, and the median household income on a monthly basis is about $5,200. And so that puts us at about 21%, which is on par with a lot of our other peer communities. You can see that Wake County had a slightly lower percentage, but Mecklenburg and Durham had a slightly higher percentage. One note that I want to make about this particular data set is that while we used median household income to create this comparison, if we section out just young professionals, so looking at folks who are really in the 25 to 40 range and looking at their monthly household income, that percent increases to 31. And so that would suggest that there's slightly bit more of a burden for young professionals, perhaps those who especially are renting alone, to be able to afford to live here in our Greensboro and Guilford County community. So looking at construction permits and really the capacity to house all of the people in our community, we can look at a 5-year trend here. So in 2020, the city of Greensboro had just shy of 1,500 permits, and those are single family duplex condos, diverse housing. If you fast forward to 2024, that number gets almost up to 1,800 permits. And specifically the number of apartment units, if you look comparing 2023 at around 780 to 2024, right at 1,200, that is a significant increase. However, if we think back to Cecilia's slides about the expected growth that we have here in our community due to a lot of organizations and companies choosing to locate here, this trend is probably a little bit slower pace than what we need to be able to house everyone within our community. And not only do we need single family residences, but we need diverse housing, and we need it at multi-price points to accommodate all of the different residents that we have here and the needs that they have for their families. The last chapter that I'll share with you today is really talking about connectivity and how being connected as community is a really big indicator of our community health. And the first thing that I'll discuss is broadband access. And we can really think of broadband as a modern day utility, just as important as your water or electricity in your home. So when we look at the percent of Guilford County residents who have broadband actually available to them in their homes, we're sitting at about 66%. And this is lagging behind our peer counties in Wake with 80, and Durham with 71, and Mecklenburg with just about 79%. Forsyth is sitting right at 49%. I'd like you to take a look at the second to last row, percent of residents with no internet access at all. We have about 11% of our residents here in Guilford County who do not have access. And again, if you compare that with Wake, Durham, and Mecklenburg, we do have a higher rate of residents with no internet access. And then again, similar, if you'll look at the very last row, the percent of residents with no internet devices at all is high compared to all of our peer communities, including Forsyth County. And so this is a real issue when we think about connectivity in terms of people being able to connect to the resources that they need, connect to school, like a virtual learning day, or even job opportunities. So there's room for improvement in the area of broadband access in our community. Another area of connectivity that I would love to discuss with you is our parks and green spaces. I hope that all of you have had an opportunity to participate in all of the great programming and great green spaces that we have here in our community. In the city of Greensboro alone, we have over 7,000 acres of parkland, and we have 63% of residents here in our community that can get to a park within just a 10-minute walk. And so if you'll look at the bubbles below, you'll see that broken down by racial and ethnic composition, 67% of our Black residents live within that 10-minute walk, 60% of white residents, Hispanic residents live within a 65% of Hispanic residents live within that 10-minute walk, and then 59% of Asian residents. Switching gears a bit to yet another form of connectivity, transit, again, is another one of those vital resources, just like broadband access. And while we do have robust transit systems that operate here within the city of Greensboro and connecting out to our peer communities, there are some disparities to note. So if you'll look at the left-hand column, that highlights the average commute by miles to a destination, regardless of your mode of transportation. So while we are all sitting here on Zoom this morning, after we get off this Zoom, we will probably make our way to our offices. And for most of us, that commute to that destination will be about 13 miles. But if you take a look at the right-hand column, you can see the average commute time to your destination broken down by your mode of transportation. So for those of us who will be getting off this Zoom and getting in our cars to drive the 13 miles to work, that will take about 18 minutes. However, for a resident that is using public transportation to get to that same job, it will take 52 minutes to get there. So again, we see that there are some disparities there. And for our residents who rely on public transportation, or for those who just want to use it as an alternative to a personal vehicle, it is a burden. And then lastly, I will talk about voter turnout as a metric for civic engagement and connectivity in our community. Cecilia touched on this in our introduction. But if you'll take a look at the chart here, the percent of voter turnout, total voter turnout in Guilford County, this last election, this past fall, our presidential election, 71% of registered voters in Guilford County came out to participate in that election. And we can see that that drops off a bit when we look at midterms. And then, as Cecilia mentioned, in July of 2022 and November of 2017 for our Greensboro municipal elections, only 16 and 15% of registered voters in the city of Greensboro participated in those particular elections. And if we look at that by age, we can see that voters who are older, 66 and older, came out to vote only at 31% in the last municipal election. But then if we jump down to look at young professionals, specifically those in the 26 to 40 age category, only 6% of those registered voters participated in our local election. And so there's work to be done around engaging the young, specifically the young people in our community, and encouraging them to be engaged in our local government and to really understand the impacts of what local government does and how it's really relevant to every resident in our community. So that wraps up our chapters in the report. I hope that you will take some time to look at it more closely. There's a lot more data in the report that we did not dive into today. But when we think about the report in its entirety and what we can do after we've read it cover to cover, there are 5 action steps that we wanted to share out with the community and that we challenge you to act on. So the first is stay informed, and that's simple. Attend public meetings, subscribe to local news sources, stay up to date on all the local issues that are impacting our community. Number 2, get involved. And that can look like participating in your PTA, volunteering with a nonprofit, being a part of your neighborhood association, and shaping the policies and the spaces that impact you and your neighborhood. Number 3, engage directly. Meet with your local representatives. All of us are represented by city council and by county commissioners, and they are here to connect with us and to serve you as their constituents. So we encourage you to identify who your representatives are and engage with them. And number 4, research and educate. So there's a lot of really great information out there, both on our governmental websites and organizational websites here in our community. And there's a lot to take in. So I encourage you to just take your time, pick an issue that's important to you and do some research around that. And then finally, again, vote. Participate in our local elections. We know that our local elections have the most immediate impact on our daily lives. And as you could see in the data, we have quite a bit of room to grow in that area. So some very easy, actionable steps for you. And we encourage you to share this report with your network and encourage them to take action as well. So I want to just say a quick thank you to all of the folks in the community who helped make this report possible. We had a lot of help from our friends at both the city of Greensboro and Guilford County, as well as a lot of community organizations and our advisory group as well. So this was definitely a team project, but we're excited to launch it and to have you be a part of it. And so I will back up to the question slide. I see lots of happening in the chat, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe we can take a look at that.
Okay, most of the things happening in the chat are people making connections.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
But if anyone has a question, you can definitely use the raise your hand feature. We'd love to hear those.
Or you can connect with us afterwards as well. We're happy to chat. James, I see you with your hand up. Or were you just moving something on your computer?
Listen, I do have a question, but I was actually sneezing.
Don't move.
What
God bless you.
can you all give us just a short overview of how we're going to close the gaps? I know everybody loves Greensboro and Guilford County. So what's the plan on getting the growth better? It helps everybody as a business owner, quality of life. I do see that we're in the top 25 now of best cities to go to. That was good. But I just wanted to know, is there a plan around growth? And I would like to hear that from you all.
Sarah, I can jump in. I mean, I think the Chamber of Commerce Grow plan, the 5-year strategic plan, is a real high-level look at the levers that we need to pull to make improvements. And so the economic conditions are going to influence all of these things. And so the more jobs, the higher the wages, the more the education and workforce training that's happening at all levels, whether that's our career and technical education in Guilford County schools in K-12, whether it's increasing higher education attainment, hiring, skilled labor, et cetera. And so more jobs, higher wages. That's not like the only thing, but I would say if we're going to point to change, particularly in this report, that'll make the biggest change over time. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope. I think that's it. And James, I'll just say I heard from Katrina that you do a good job of being an advocate for our community to outsiders, and that's a big piece of it too. When we think about our reputation as a community and how people see it when they're making choices about jobs and relocating their family. So that's important as well.
And I'll add in, I know Cecilia mentioned the growth strategic plan, and that absolutely is how the chamber actively works in that space. The other piece is our advocacy. So I know Ryan's on the call, Ryan's on our governmental affairs committee, but these are the conversations that are happening in that space as well. So as we prep legislative agendas, as we go to our legislators, these are the conversations that are being had. We had our board retreat at the end of last year, and we've kind of stopped calling it a board retreat and more started calling it a leadership retreat with a lot of leaders throughout the community. And we had that in Winston-Salem on purpose to pull a regional conversation together. And we talked about a lot of these things. We talked about childcare. We talked about housing. We talked about infrastructure. So you will continue to hear the chamber and the city and the county and High Point and Winston and our friends throughout the region have this conversation and continue to push the needle on this one. So that work is actively happening all around us.
Any other questions we can answer? And again, we're happy to chat offline as well.
All right, I will mention that we do have another report coming out soon. You may have been asking yourself when we were presenting, why are they not talking about education? And it's because we really believe that it was worthy of its own standalone report. And so we are actively, and when I say actively, I mean really actively working on a pre-K to 12 education report, and that will come out in mid-April. And so stay tuned. Hopefully Tracy and Katrina will invite us back and we can share the results of that report. I'll also mention if you are a part of a civic organization and you would like this presentation to your civic organization, maybe that's a Rotary or a different kind of club, let us know. And we would be happy to come and present in person or via Zoom. And it looks like, Cordell, you had a question. Yes. Maybe not. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
This is Gail. Hi, I'm at Noble. You said you'd be happy to present at a civic group. Would you also be willing to present like at Noble at a board meeting sometime?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll reach out. Thank you.
Mhm.
Lacey, I think you raised your hand too. No, okay. Cordell, did you have a question? Okay, she's got her hands up, but you got to unmute.
You're welcome to type it into the chat too, if that's easier.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually doing this on my phone and the screen is so small that I can barely see anything. I am new to the chamber. I'm new to the community. I do like these kinds of events because they educate me on the community that I'm in, and it gives me an idea of kind of the growth potential and opportunity. So I relocated here from Southern California. I'm currently with Bassett as one of their design consultants, but I also own a design firm and dealership out of California and still actively doing projects through that company. But came to North Carolina for High Point Market, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, and fell in love with the area and community. So I work in Greensboro, but actually reside in Whitsett. So I do see the dynamic between the two communities. One of my questions specifically is, as far as being active with the chamber, I was very active with the Los Angeles Chamber and did a ton of work with them. But I want to kind of have an idea as to where those opportunities lie with this chamber. And that's my main question.
Okay. Katrina is our membership manager. Katrina will get in touch because the opportunities to engage with us are kind of massive. So we are a traditional chamber of commerce, but we also are an economic development organization. You heard from Cecilia and Sarah today from Action Greensboro. They do a lot of talent and workforce development, a lot of community improvement work, a lot of special projects in economic development space. So we will definitely have Katrina reach back out so she can walk through all of the ways to engage, because today is a great example of networking. Had we been in person, you'd get to see us kind of all together. We do a lot of that, but we do a lot of work on the community level, like I said, all the way up to our legislative agendas and our advocacy work. So Katrina will reach out and give you some more information on all of that, or somebody from the membership team will.
We'll be
Sounds
in
good.
Go ahead, Cordell.
I said, sounds good.
Awesome. Some of our ambassadors are on the call too, so we'll definitely get in touch with all of that info. All right. So to wrap things up today, thank you again, everyone, for coming online with us. There's been an entire snowstorm happen. I think my car disappeared while we were in here. So it did snow again. There it is. Thank you again to Cone Health. Ryan, thank you for everything that you do for us. Thank you for being our hosts and our sponsors of Coffee and Conversation throughout the year. A couple of things coming up. Small Business Award nominations are open. Small Business Awards are, you are eligible for a small business award, whether you are a chamber member or not. They're open to the entire community. So definitely go to our website, nominate a small business. Those nominations are open through February the 26th. We then have a board that meets to go through those nominations, and we have the Small Business Awards on May the 8th. That'll be at Piedmont Hall. That will be in the afternoon into the evening. So definitely mark your calendar for May 8th, but also nominate a small business. We love to see the nominations come in. There are multiple categories, so take advantage of that opportunity and get those in. A couple of on the goes are popping up. So on the go is our networking series. They're pop-ups. We go and visit members in their spaces, and we get to learn about new businesses. We get to see old favorites. That is a wonderful time. That is a members only networking series. So you can sign up for either one of the two that are coming up. One is on February 27th at On the Go. The On the Go is at Reconsider Goods from 4 to 5. So come out and visit and get to know the folks at Reconsider Goods. On March the 4th, we are at Fairfield Inn from 9 to 10. So we got one in the afternoon, one in the morning. So these pop up And hopefully you're able to come out and visit us. We have a great time at the On the Goes. There was karaoke one time. I don't know that we'll ever do that again, but it could happen. You never know what we're going to do. So definitely come out and see us. And then also mark your calendars. If you came to our member appreciation block party last year, we shut down February 1 and had food trucks and had wonderful information from lots of our businesses. It was a big open house. That will happen again on April the 10th, and that's open to our membership as well. So mark your calendars for those dates. We hope to see you in person at Sagewell on Drawbridge Parkway next month on the third Thursday for coffee and conversation. And we hope to see you before then as well. Be safe. These are some big flakes, guys. Like, it's unbelievable. So go enjoy, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.